At a population of 8.2 billion, some argue that the world has enough people. Others say that a decline in birth rate on a global level doesn't bode well for our future. Those who argue that the world is overpopulated point to families like the Collins as an example of contributing to overpopulation. You see, Carissa and Mondre Collins have 11 children. Yes, you heard that right, 11. In fact, they just welcomed baby number 11 into the world about a month ago at the time of making this video. Their Instagram account, the Collins Kids, currently has 1.6 million followers. But Carissa got her start as a mommy blogger way back in 2009. She had a Blogspot account where she would upload almost daily blogs detailing her desire to start a family with her husband of 2 years at the time, Mondre. Carissa shares in her blog that she and Mondre met when they were both 22, and throughout her blog, she details her journey to become a mother, claiming that her purpose in life is to encourage women to trust God with their womb, meaning that she wants to encourage women to have as many children as God wills them to have. And this is the key message that Carissa has continued promoting through her Instagram. You see, Carissa and Mondre defend their decision to have so many children by claiming that they are just following God's command to be fruitful and multiply. This command is found in Genesis chapter 6, after God creates Eve and presents her to Adam. Not to get into semantics, but I would argue that this is more of an invitation rather than a command. Throughout the Bible, when God commands things, the words shall and must are used. So God's use of the word be when telling Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply sounds more like an invitation rather than a command to me. Anyway, when I dove into the backstory of Carissa and Mondre, I actually found that the idea to have so many kids was Carissa's idea, not Mondre's, unlike the story that Carissa spins in her Instagram. You see, again, Carissa shared back in a blog of hers, circa 2009, way before she even started creating content on Instagram, and before Instagram was even an app. She shares that she had turned 25, and after being married to Mondre for only a few years, she was already baby crazy. She feared that at 25, she was getting too old to start her journey of motherhood. And with her sister being pregnant as well as her best friend, she wanted to step on it and get pregnant too. She said in that blog post that whenever she mentioned having kids to Mondre, he said that he wanted to wait until they were more financially secure. Case in point, at the time that Carissa wanted to start having kids, they couldn't even afford a date night at a local shooting range. By the way, I forgot to mention that they live in Texas, so a date night at a shooting range would be totally normal. As a Texan myself, I would know. Even though they couldn't afford a simple date night at a local shooting range, Carissa claimed that one night at church, she felt God tell her that if she and Mondre really trusted him, then they need to surrender completely, and that only God knows when they are mentally, physically, and financially ready to start having children. Apparently, this was enough to convince Mondre because that night, Carissa went off of birth control, and soon after, she became pregnant with their first child, a daughter. As an aside, I think the tactic that Carissa used to convince Mondre to start trying for kids is a bit slimy. The thing about conservative Christian women like Carissa that I find so funny is that they claim their husband is the head of the household. They claim that they submit to their husband's leadership, etc. But they are just as much of a leader of their family, if not more. Case in point, Mondre wanted to wait to start trying for children, but Carissa was clearly having baby fever. So conveniently, when she went to church one night, without Mondre, by the way, she heard from God that they needed to trust him by going off of birth control. If Carissa really was a trad wife that submits to her husband's leadership, she would have listened to Mondre when he said he didn't think they were ready to start having children, namely because they did not have enough money to support having a kid. I would argue that Carissa, if she was truly a trad wife, wouldn't have used God/religion to manipulate Mondre into trying for children, because essentially that is what she did by using the whole "God told me so" card with her husband. Anyway, according to her blog, Carissa's first pregnancy was very rough. She was constantly nauseous to the point of vomiting frequently. Apparently, this so worried Mondre that he said this had to be her only pregnancy. Obviously, that did not stick. Another troubling part of Carissa's pregnancy is the story of how she neglected her dog, Boots.
Trigger warning for animal neglect. Skip to timestamp 8:23 to avoid.
In one blog post, while Carissa was pregnant with her first baby, she shared how she and Mondre left for a 2-week cruise sponsored by Mondre's company. When they left for the cruise, apparently they forgot to clean out their dog's food bowl before they left. When they got back, Carissa fed Boots the usual can of wet food. But what Carissa didn't realize was that there was old wet food still in the bowl that had started to rot while they were gone. After Boots started acting a bit funny, Carissa finally checked her food bowl and realized that she had poured the fresh wet food over the old wet food, which was now covered in maggots. And so when Boots went to eat the new food, she clearly got sick from eating the old maggoty food that was mixed in. In this blog post, Carissa shames herself by asking how could she be a good mother when she can't even take care of her own dog. I include this story because it foreshadows the neglect that Carissa is accused of when it comes to her kids. You may wonder if Carissa did the responsible thing by taking Boots to the vet when she was acting funny. And the answer is no, she didn't. She just prayed for Boots until she started acting normal again later that night. But despite Carissa wondering how she could be a good mom if she can't even be a good pet owner, and a few blog posts later, Carissa shares how she sat Mondre down to tell him her 5-year plan, which basically included getting pregnant for the next 4 years after they have their first baby. So that way they would have 5 kids by the time they have reached their 30s. It's crazy to me that she hadn't even had baby number 1 yet, and she was already hoping to have 5 children. Speaking of neglect, right out the gate with her first pregnancy, we see how Carissa was unfit to be a mother, in my opinion. She claims in one troubling blog post that her baby was good with breastfeeding while she was at the hospital. But once they arrived home, she tried to give the baby a pacifier, which the baby took to right away. But after that, Carissa claimed that the baby no longer wanted to breastfeed when Carissa would attempt it. And so Carissa shares in this blog post that about 40 hours had passed where the baby was unable to breastfeed, and she had not given the baby any other source of nutrients. She finally called her mother, who said that she needed to switch to a bottle, and that did the trick. Carissa said it was so scary, though, because for those 40 hours, her baby had cried nonstop and had cried so hard that she was gasping for breath. Like, ma'am, how do you not think to try bottle feeding or to take your baby to a hospital when she is having trouble breastfeeding? I know that Carissa was only 25 with her first baby, but I feel like that's old enough to have some common sense. Also, she had a blog, so clearly she had access to the internet and could have looked stuff up. And you would think that since she wanted to be a mom so bad, she would be familiar enough with babies to know that you cannot go that long without feeding them. I mean, again, that's just common sense, and that you need to try a bottle with formula or go visit a pediatrician if breastfeeding isn't working. Anyway, it's just shocking that right off the bat, Carissa shows neglect towards her kids. Also, in a blog post about the topic of breastfeeding, Carissa shared that she wanted to breastfeed so badly. And I get that, but again, you can't neglect your baby's well-being for your own feelings. And this sadly becomes a trend that you'll notice with Carissa and her children, that she often neglects their well-being for the sake of her feeling about things. Anyway, after that blog post, Carissa dedicates the next blog post to her own neglect. So Carissa shares that for years, starting when she turned 20, and at the time now she's 25, writing about this experience. So for years, she had been experiencing dizzy spells, fainting spells, numbness in her limbs, extreme fatigue, and chronic pain. So years before she first got pregnant, she went to a neurologist to have an MRI to see if they can find the cause of all of these mysterious symptoms. And they did find something. They found 2 white spots in her brain. But Carissa didn't follow up with that news until her symptoms got so bad after her first pregnancy that she went back to get another MRI. So between the 2 MRIs, there had been a span of about 5 years. And so this time, when she went for the second MRI, they found 5 to 7 white spots in her brain. So the white spots had grown in that 5-year span. At first, they thought she had MS, but after a spinal tap, they determined that instead, she most likely had a hole in her heart. Carissa commented in this blog post that if she had just followed up with the first doctor years ago, she probably would have had an easier time health-wise. And I would say, yeah, girl, you probably would have. As someone who has a chronic illness myself, one that I've had since birth, I can't imagine a doctor finding white spots in my brain, and rather than following up on that, I just ignore it for years until I basically can't anymore. Now, you may be wondering why someone would get such serious medical news and not follow up with a doctor sooner. I'm going to speculate that since Carissa grew up in a conservative Christian environment, she was probably taught to rely on God for healing rather than going to a doctor. Just like Carissa shared that when her dog was sick, all she did was pray, she probably has the same attitude when it comes to her own health, that you don't need doctors or vets, you just need God. I know that might sound crazy, but growing up in a Southern conservative Christian community myself, I know plenty of people that have that same attitudes towards health as Carissa does. This story about Carissa neglecting her own health is interesting because some speculate that the reason why she wants to be constantly pregnant, which she basically has for the past 14-ish years, is because being pregnant relieves her own health issues. As weird as it sounds, due to the way that hormones are being balanced during pregnancy, amongst other things, being pregnant can sometimes temporarily relieve some health issues that women experience. But more on that later. As of present day, Carissa still doesn't really have an answer for her medical condition, by the way, but we'll get into that later. Let's switch gears now and talk about some of the allegations of abuse and neglect that have been raised against Carissa and Mondre. All the way back in 2009, Carissa stated in one blog post that she always knew she wanted to hit her kids, i.e. she is basically saying that she is a fan of corporal punishment, which means, spanking as forms of discipline. Later on in that same blog post, she also joked that she wanted to hit her first baby 50 times to pay her back for all the pain and problems she experienced during pregnancy. Because remember, her first pregnancy was very rough. She was in pain. She was constantly vomiting and feeling nauseous way beyond the first trimester, which usually is about when nausea and morning sickness and all of that can wear off. But for Carissa, she experienced extreme fatigue, pain, nausea, vomiting throughout the entire course of her pregnancy. And interestingly enough, you can go back and find Carissa's old Blogspot account and the post where she talks about wanting to use corporal punishment to discipline her children, and where she also wanted to beat her baby 50 times as payback for the rough pregnancy, is now deleted, but there is a post still up where she tries to backpedal and claim that it was all a joke. She was just joking, that she would never hit her baby, that she would never use corporal punishment or anything like that. So even as far back as 2009, Carissa was already getting called out and receiving pushback for her problematic views. And this is also a trend that will continue on throughout her journey of moving to Instagram. Anyway, I'm sure that I'm not alone in thinking that those two statements are just horrifically gross. Like, one, how can you say that you so wanted to be a mom, that children are precious gifts from God, and all of these other things that Carissa would say in her early blog post? And then you can also talk about how you always knew that you wanted to spank or hit your kids as punishment. And two, I also think it's really gross to even joke about abusing your kid to pay them back for all the pain that you went through during pregnancy. Like, first of all, you so wanted to have kids, and you should know, as a woman, how difficult pregnancy and birth can be. Second of all, your baby was literally a harmless fetus inside of you that definitely wasn't purposefully hurting your body. The baby wasn't doing anything other than growing and developing as it should. To even think that an innocent fetus was harming you is just gross. Hearing Carissa talk about these things as a mother, heck, even just as a human, is deeply disturbing. Again, for someone who wanted to be a mother so badly, she clearly despises motherhood down to being pregnant, in my opinion anyway. Although Carissa states in her blog that she never hit her kids, she does claim that Mondre does. She even says that she worries Mondre doesn't know his own strength, and that the line between corporal punishment and abuse is thin. Indeed, it is, which is why many child therapists, doctors, and other child specialists are against corporal punishment, because it is too easy for people to get carried away in a fit of anger and hit their children harder than they intended. Mondre himself confirms that he does spank the kids in this video.
Girls, you want this? Whack, 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 whack. That's what you get spankings with.
In this video, it's also troubling that he uses a spatula, because you definitely can't feel how hard you are hitting when you use a tool like that instead of your hand. It's also troubling to note that, again, baby number 1 was only 2 years old when Carissa wrote that post. and their second baby at that time was just a newborn. Like many mommy bloggers back in the day, Carissa abandoned Blogspot and made her official switch to Instagram in 2013. And again, like I said, her Blogspot account is still active, but you will not find any content about Mondre being abusive or her wanting to abuse her kids that I just shared, because she has since deleted all of those posts. I don't understand why she just didn't delete her entire Blogspot, but whatever. It shows that she was very methodical, in my opinion, of going back and deleting specific posts that she didn't want dredged back up. So here is an Instagram post that Carissa made full of fun facts about her, Mondre, and their kids. Let's take a look at it because it gives a good intro into their family and the beliefs that Carissa and Mondre share from their platform.
10 kids wasn't in our plans, but we're so thankful it was in God's. We don't vaccinate. We don't celebrate holidays, but rather God's feasts. We do home church with several other families. We lead Bible studies. Most of our kids play basketball. I played basketball and volleyball in college, and Hubs played basketball in college. We moved to 3 acres of land and can't wait to start gardening and maybe raising some animals. We homeschool. We don't live close to family. We don't come from large families. I'm a photographer. Hubs works in finance and does basketball training on the side. We drive a 15-passenger Mercedes Sprinter van. We both have business college degrees. We're serious about the Bible and devoted to following Christ. We read the entire Bible every year. We live in Texas. We trust God to give however many children He desires, so more could be coming. We're tall with big feet. Hubs is 6'6" and I'm 5'9", and in case you're wondering, yes, we know what causes this. Yes, we own a TV. Yes, our hands are full, but our hearts are exploding. Yes, we've heard of birth control and we don't condone it, no. We're not rich but spiritually rich and blessed to be provided for by God. 2 million followers doesn't equal to $1 million. No, I don't make money off my children.
And so on Instagram, Carissa continues to spout problematic beliefs. We're just going to do a quick speed run of her problematic takes so that you can get a feel for what her Instagram is all about. Of course, one of the topics she discusses over and over and over is having a large family. Now, I'm not saying that having a large family is problematic. I mean, in Carissa's case, I think it is, but we'll get to that later. Instead, I mean that the misinformation Carissa shares around pregnancy is troubling. If you couldn't guess, Carissa is very pro-life, even going so far as claiming that going on birth control or getting a vasectomy is equivalent to abortion because you are, quote, preventing life, end quote. Tell me you weren't paying attention in biology or anatomy class, Carissa, because if you did, you would know that men have thousands of sperm and women have hundreds of eggs, and not all of those eggs are going to be fertilized, and not all of the sperm is going to be used in fertilization. I mean, think about it. If every egg that a woman had in her body was meant to be fertilized, each woman would have like hundreds of kids. As my fellow women know, often you ovulate and the eggs do not become fertilized, which is why we have periods. Even if you're trying for a baby, you may not get pregnant on the first try due to many factors. So yeah, there are going to be many eggs that don't get fertilized, and there are going to be, again, many sperm that die due to not aiding in the fertilization process. So even if you're attempting to get pregnant, this can happen. And I would argue that no, going on birth control or getting a vasectomy is not preventing life. Because again, not every egg is going to be a fertilized egg, and not every sperm is going to aid in fertilization. And, by the way, I have also known plenty of women who have gotten pregnant even while they were on birth control. So the argument that going on birth control prevents life is kind of a weak one. In fact, I've heard stories of women who have had multiple viable pregnancies while being on birth control. So anyway, in one very gross Instagram post, Carissa justifies her anti-birth control and anti-vasectomy perspective by saying that the Bible never mentions, quote, sterilization, end quote. It only talks about God opening or closing a womb. In fact, let me just read this post to you.
To many women feel done with bearing children, or they have too much heartache from miscarriage, or too much hardship in pregnancy, or trauma from a birth, or a feeling of just not wanting more. And so we hear all this and imagine prevention and sterilization as our lifeboat and helicopter. I'm here to tell you that isn't biblical. The Bible doesn't condone prevention or sterilization. You simply won't find it.
So, first of all, I think it's gross to tell women that they shouldn't be done having kids because they have a lot already, or they just can't bear to have any more after a miscarriage. Like, who are you to tell other women that they aren't done having kids, no matter what? Something I've never understood with conservative Christians like Carissa is why they care so much what other women do with their life and their body. Like, why do you want other women to join you in having as many kids as possible so badly? Another troubling aspect of Carissa's Instagram is how much she overshares. I know many influencers, especially mommy influencers, overshare because they see it as just being real or authentic or vulnerable. And while I'm all for being those things on social media, I do think that you can absolutely overshare. For example, Carissa hints at her sex life with Mondre a lot. There are countless posts where she discusses how Mondre doesn't pull out. Here in another post, she debunks common misconceptions about herself, Mondre, and their family. And all the way at the very bottom of this post, she says that, by the way, in case you really wanted to know, her vagina is not a gaping hole after having all of her kids, and that her vagina actually heals into a tighter hole. I can't believe I just said all that on the internet. I'm sorry, Mom. But point made, most people like me feel awkward discussing things like this. In another TMI post, Carissa posted this photo of one of her kids meeting the newest baby at the time. As you can guess by the placement of the sun emoji, Carissa is covering her exposed vagina. Now, I believe that birth photos are stunning and beautiful, but this photo of Carissa kissing Mondre while holding her new baby with her son standing right next to her as she is just spread eagle is a lot.
Yuck! TMI, my friends.
Like, out of all the photos people took during the birth, you had to post that one? Some things are just better left in your private life. Speaking of private life, in this post, Carissa makes a point to tell everyone that she and Mondre are entering the dreaded 40-day post-pregnancy intimacy fast. Which, usually doctors recommend waiting 6 weeks, which is about a month and a half after giving birth to start being intimate again. But Carissa adheres to the Bible, which mentions waiting 40 days after giving birth to have sex. TMI posts lead to a huge issue that many have with Carissa's content, which is, what will the kids think of her post when they're old enough to access the internet? As the saying goes, the internet is forever, and even if Carissa deletes her social media, which she'll never do, we all know that screen grabs and videos people have made on the family will still be found. Carissa claims in this Q&A video that she often shows the kids her content and they cry laughing together. But she only shows them the videos that they make together. She definitely doesn't read her essays that she puts underneath the video. So, one day her kids are going to be able to see her post about her small hole and about how she and their dad just can't wait to get freaky. Apart from being TMI on Instagram, Carissa also uses her platform to share her views on politics and society. It's way too much to cover, but basically, Carissa is racist.
In this post celebrating her wedding anniversary, Carissa says that she, quote, always loved hip-hop music and dark skin, end quote. Many said this not only fetishized Black men, but also perpetuated the stereotype that Black people should be associated with hip-hop. Here Carissa shared a post to her IG stories that called Día de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, an ungodly holiday. The worst example is this Christmas sweater Carissa made, where most of her kids have blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. Here's proof that through the company, Wander Prints, that you can customize the sweater however you want. Here's where you can choose the skin, eye and hair color of each person you want on the sweater. And here's a side-by-side comparison of each of Carissa's kids and the way they are depicted on the sweater.
Sexist.
In the same anniversary post, Carissa shared that she met her husband at a club where she liked to hang out with dudes because she never got along with women. Here's a sexist post Carissa shared on her IG stories about how feminism convinced women they were slaves when they were homemakers, but really independent women who work are slaves. In this post, Carissa shared how disappointed she, and apparently everyone in her household was when they had 3 girls in a row. Carissa shared another post on her IG stories about how women need to reject the wicked agenda of the world and embrace their roles as wives and mothers. Lastly, Carissa also shared a post on her IG stories about how today's men are not real men because real men would not stand for what is happening in society today.
Transphobic, homophobic.
Here's a post Carissa shared on her IG, which is low-key racist by making the devil dark-skinned, and homophobic by showing the devil trying to destroy the nuclear family through the quote LGBTQ+ agenda, end quote. In this post, Carissa argues that abortion, birth control, pulling out, and being LGBTQ+ are all sins. In this IG essay, Carissa rants about how God showed her that, in her children's lifetime, being heterosexual will be uncommon, and that many churches say we should welcome the LGBTQ+ community, and how if Christians want to speak out against this, then they are being hateful.
Ableist.
In this IG Q&A, someone asks Carissa if God can heal autism, and Carissa replies, of course, this is low-key ableist, because it implies that autism is just a simple illness that needs to be cured, like a cold. Also, as we all know, many autistic people live life like everyone else, and do not need to be quote, healed, end quote. In this IG story, Carissa says that PTSD, anxiety, and depression can all be cured by meditating on the words of the Bible. This is also ableist because she implies that if you do not have faith in God, you cannot overcome those things. Many people with those mental health issues don't believe in God. So what about them? Is there no cure for them? Also, has many with mental health issues know, you don't find a cure for anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc., but more so a way to manage it.
Anti-vax, anti-science, and a flat earther / general conspiracy theorist.
Carissa shared this to her IG stories, openly mocking those who got the COVID vaccine. These are posts from IG accounts that promote the flat earth conspiracy that Carissa shared on her IG stories.
Funnily enough, she also tries to cosplay as Jewish despite having no Jewish heritage. This is something that has also upset a large portion of her Instagram followers. It's a funny thing I've noticed with super conservative Christians, that they're obsessed with appropriating Jewish holidays, customs, even the names of God. I'll get into that here in just a second. I think it's because Israel is referred to as God's chosen people in the Bible, and so for hardcore Christians like Carissa, it's not enough to just be one of God's children. Like, the Bible says that we are all sons and daughters of God. So for Carissa, it's not enough to just be a child of God. She has to be one of the chosen people of God. Carissa shows her appropriation of Jewish culture by giving God her own made-up name and giving the holy celebration of Passover a redone pioneer woman makeover. Let's tackle the topic of Carissa's nickname for God first. So Carissa refers to God as Yahuwah, a name that she made up for God. In the Old Testament, one name that God gives the people of Israel to call him is Yahweh. Jewish people have a deep reverence for God's name, and many have the practice of abbreviating it to YHWH because it is too holy and sacred to use the full version of Yahweh. In fact, many Jewish people do not even use the term Yahweh when they are praying to God. Rather, they will use Adonai, which means Lord. But Carissa shortens her weird name, Yahuwah, for God, to an even weirder nickname, Yah. Y-A-H. Yah. You'll see that she refers to God as Yah many, many times. People have asked her why she does that and where she came up with Yahuwah, and she just says that God told her to use those names. As a Christian myself, I know that God is called Yahweh and that the Hebrew version of Jesus is Yeshua. So to me, it sounds like Carissa just combined the two, Yahweh and Yeshua, to make Yahuwah. Also, as a Christian, it bothers me that she calls God Yah. It's just so casual and, dare I say, blasphemous. Like you're really going to call Almighty God, who made the heavens and the earth, the entire universe and everything in it, Yah. It's giving Jesus is my homeboy vibes. Actually, I could totally see Carissa wearing this kind of shirt. Anyway, along with upsetting her Christian and Jewish audiences by calling God Yah, she is also deeply upset the Jewish members of her audience by taking the celebration of Passover and giving it a very white, very Christian makeover. If you don't know, Passover is a celebratory meal that Jews have to remember how their ancestors were set free from being enslaved by the Egyptians. Seder is the traditional meal that Jews have for Passover. And each part of the meal has a symbolic meaning. Here's an infographic showing the meaning behind each element of Seder. As I mentioned, many of the elements have a deep symbolic meaning, like the herb or potato that is dipped in salt water to remind Jews of the bitter tears their ancestors shed while being oppressed and enslaved by the Egyptians. So with all of that in mind, here is Carissa's version of Seder. Many have called this the pioneer woman version of Seder because what in the rain is this? This is misappropriation at its finest when you don't even assemble a proper Seder plate. You just pick what you want to make for Passover and ignore all of the important symbolism and history and culture behind Seder and Passover. Here's Carissa's response to the Jewish community when they have called her out for offending them with her misappropriation of their culture.
Someone left her a comment saying, This is deeply and offensively inappropriate. Shame on you and every Christian who thinks it's cool and spiritual to appropriate from the faith you've spent so long oppressing. Carissa responds, quote, I had no idea the Bible was only for Jews. It's not, by the way. He is my Yahweh too, end quote.
It's the doubling down that infuriates me, and it's just that she's so ignorant to say that the Bible is for Christians too, not just Jews, and that she was just following what was in the Bible. Because as many know, Jews do not use the Bible as their holy book. They use the Torah, which is the Old Testament of the Bible. The Bible that Christians read and use for their holy book has both the Old Testament and the New Testament. I share all of this because it shows how ignorant Carissa is and how troubling it is that she has such a large platform of 1.6 million followers. Her hateful views of the LGBTQ plus community, her racism, her cultural misappropriation of the Jewish culture, and her dangerous beliefs about science, health, and politics are broadcasted out to such a wide audience. But Carissa's truly problematic behavior worries me, especially when it comes to her kids. I'm going to start with the least problematic things concerning her kids and work my way up to the most egregious. So one troubling thing that many have accused Carissa of is whitewashing her kids in photos, especially in their family photos when they are all together. If you don't know what whitewashing means, it basically means editing your photos to make you appear more light-skinned or more fair than you actually are. And this is troubling in Carissa's world because obviously her kids are biracial. So many people point out the fact that she tends to add filters and edit her children's skin tone to look lighter and whiter than it actually is. So take a look at this video showing her kids and then look at this family photo taken for Christmas. You can definitely see that all of the children appear lighter skinned in the Christmas photo compared to the video. You can definitely see that Carissa still does this because in these photos of her second most recent baby, his skin is lightened to an almost bronze shade. And in the following photo, he just straight up looks ombre, the baby, if you will.
Here are more examples of whitewashing with the same child, their second youngest at this time, in this screen grab from a video Carissa made, which can't be edited as easily as photos. His skin is the same shade all over, right? Here is a photo of the same kid. Look at his arms and face. Compared to his legs and feet, the ombre baby is back. Here's a photo of another son of theirs. Once again, look at his face, hands and chest. Compared to his feet, the ombre baby has clearly been a trend of Carissa's for a long time.
And this is also a photo of her most recent baby. And here she made his skin look so pale that it straight up looks like paper white. And then now compare this to another photo of their most recent baby, if you will. So the whitewashing leads to a deeper conversation about racism, not only from Carissa herself, but also from some members of her audience. Here are a few comments people have left talking about, quote, mixing genes, quote unquote.
Someone left a comment on one of Carissa's posts that said, "Your husband's gene is way too strong." Another person comments, "They are actually not. The white genetics are starting to evolve and become stronger due to their need for survival." Carissa chimes in and says they're not strong enough. 7 blue eyes and lots of blonde hair. Here's another comment someone left on a post celebrating Angel's birthday. It says, "My dear Carissa, your genes are super strong. This is one of the very rare occasions where the Caucasian gene dominates the Afro in a mixed-race child. A stranger who has never seen her before would never guess she has a black dad. She looks like Mariah Carey. Happy birthday, lovely Angel. May your life glorify God. The gross thing is, Carissa liked both this comment and the previous one.
What a weird thing to be obsessed with. Why would you leave a comment like this unless you were low-key worried about a pure gene pool, i.e., you're also low-key racist?
Another troubling aspect of racism from Carissa is the fact that she shared images of her kids to be used on IG accounts that seem obsessed with mixed-race kids. The account here is actually called Mixed Kids, and you can see way down here that it lists the heritage for the kids, with Carissa's heritage being listed as Irish, German, and Swedish, and Mandre's heritage is listed as Black and Apache Native American. Many speculate why Carissa's kids were found on this page. Some say it's for money, which I believe because this page had $15 promo in their bio, so if they used your photo, you would get $15, which is gross to me. Like, do you really need money so badly that you would trade photos of your kids for $15? This also contradicts everything Carissa says about not exploiting her kids for money. Also, if there was any doubt that Carissa submitted these photos, here at the very bottom, the account owner shares that in order to be featured on this account, you have to follow them, DM them, and use the hashtag #MixedKids. So Carissa had to do all these steps to have her kids featured. This wasn't just a random photo that this account grabbed and put on their page. Again, I think it's gross that Carissa obviously exploits her kids for a quick buck, but she also leans into the rather racist obsession with biracial kids and their heritage, and that is also a bit fetishizing, which I and many others think.
For supporters of Carissa who argue that she can't be racist because she married a Black man and has biracial kids, I want to share this snippet of a podcast from Slate magazine on this topic.
And I think it's also worth noting that a lot of families don't change. You know, there are people that go through entire relationships, you know, years-long marriages, and their in-laws are just as racist as the day that they met them. You know, the presence of children doesn't soften them. And in fact, some of the people who participate in interracial marriages themselves are racist. You know, I've just heard so many horror stories over the years, particularly from the children of white moms and Black dads. You know, about their mother, you know, once their parents have broken up, their mother started calling them the N-word, you know, or otherwise mistreating them on the basis of their race.
I mean, I definitely didn't have that experience, but I do know that my white grandmother who married a Black man then believed that she understood racism in a way that she clearly didn't. I know that, you know, we kind of called it white lady syndrome, where she was extremely open-minded and very liberal and extremely empathetic. She herself was Jewish. She felt she could understand discrimination. But you're right that you can be both, have a lot of unconscious bias and a lot of blind spots while married to someone of a different race.
I think it's interesting that people are okay with that, but they still haven't done the work of becoming anti-racist. You know what I mean? Like that you can still harbor the same feelings and, you know, issues with people of color that generations past had, but you're okay with the idea of people being intermarried.
Isn't it possible that all of these interracial marriages are at least moving the dial forward, even if it's not getting us all the way there?
I don't think so. You know, I've just come across too many people that have participated in these marriages that had biased feelings toward the group of people that they, you know, have chosen to partner with. And I've known too many biracial Black children who've suffered as a result.
What I think is going on with Carissa is that she wants the aesthetics of having biracial kids, but doesn't really care about racism that much. In this Instagram post, Carissa describes the discrimination her family endures, but not as a biracial family. Instead, the discrimination that they face is because they are a large family.
There are stares, there are struggles, there are prejudices, there is mistreatment, there is laughter and mocking. Vulgar words and pictures get drawn on your van. People refuse to seat you. You're not invited to parties because there are too many kids. Your choice in cars is limited. Housing is rare. You're constantly counted. The unsolicited advice is never ending. Forget raising mixed kids or being in an interracial marriage. Raising a big family takes the cake on prejudice.
One Reddit user left a great comment that sums up how I feel about this post from Carissa.
The comment says only an entitled white woman would claim that having a big family by choice is harder than dealing with racism. I really, truly worry for those children.
I worry about the kids too. And so switching gears, one concern I have comes from their living situation. In this house tour video, Carissa shares that the kids' space upstairs is their territory, quote unquote, and it's clear from this video that she doesn't really go up there that often.
This is their little baby photo wall. Most of them are their baby pictures. I still need to print anchors. And this is their playroom in the front. They were vacuuming, it looks like. So they have their books, their little couch that the dogs destroyed. I guess that's their new toy box in the corner. And then in here is Andre's room. We have 3 bedrooms upstairs. So Andre has 2 beds. He's waiting on Anchor. It's a little mess up here, but whatever. I don't know why his bag is hanging on the wall.
Like some
This is their bathroom. There's a toilet in the other door. Who sleeps in here? Angel and Andy. They switched so much I don't even know anymore.
No, Mom, you told us to.
I know, but I didn't know if you did it. So there, Andy's in her bed, Angel's in hers. That used to be our homeschool table, and hopefully when we get a bigger house, I can do that. And since we don't put any clothes in their rooms, Angel, it's okay. Since we don't have any clothes upstairs, their closets are just storage for their toys or things they don't want kids to get a hold of.
I'm so hoarse.
And then the 3 big girls' room, which they love. So this is Anissa, Anison, and Angeli's room. They have their little desks. They redo their rooms like every day, so. And their special closet. Okay, why are there clothes up here?
Because we like them in there.
No, I said no clothes upstairs.
Sorry.
See, this is where all my missing clothes are. I didn't even know they did this. This is not okay.
Yeah, we were thinking of putting our shoes in here too.
Well, that is the Collin's house. Nothing special. Nothing amazing. Mandre made this for our TV. What'd I forget?
Mom.
Yeah, they already saw that. Our rugs to play cars on. So anyway, that's all. That's how we live.
It's also clear that she just doesn't really know what her kids do up there. Throughout the video, she says things like, oh, I guess they were vacuuming, or, oh, that's their new toy chest, I guess. I didn't even know they brought their clothes up here, stuff like that. Like, how do you not know any of these things? To me, it seems like Mondre runs the household more, and so he was probably the one who told the kids to vacuum and bring their clothes up and put them in the closet, etc. But more on that theory later. Carissa also seems confused in this video at who sleeps where and claims that the kids switch up rooms and beds all the time, so she doesn't really bother to assign them rooms or keep track of them in that regard. It goes without saying, but kids desire and need stability, so I think assigning them rooms would be better for them rather than just leaving it up to them to decide who sleeps where all the time. I mean, it can also be a safety issue if you obviously don't know where your kids are. What if it's nighttime and a fire breaks out in the house? How would you account for all the kids if you don't know who is where upstairs? Same for a medical emergency or any other kind of emergency, really. It goes without saying, but knowing where your kids are, especially at night, is so important. Also, doesn't she tuck her kids in at night? I mean, so many families have nighttime routines where they'll sing songs, read stories, get ready for bed together by brushing teeth and washing faces and stuff like that. So it seems like Carissa just sends her kids up to bed when nighttime comes. Or maybe Mondre does the nighttime routine. Because, you know, if she was tucking her kids in almost every night, then she would definitely know where they slept and wouldn't be confused by their space upstairs. I don't know. That video was so weird to me because she was just acting like she'd never been up there before. Also, many noticed that Carissa seemed bored or just checked out in that video. Many people have just kind of continuously pointed out Carissa's flat affect, meaning that she doesn't really make a lot of facial expressions or talk in a way that shows any emotion. And I get it. I mean, not everyone is a bright, happy, sunny personality, but this kind of brings me to another troubling aspect of Carissa's dynamic with her kids. Again, she just seems checked out mentally and emotionally, which in and of itself is a form of neglect called emotional neglect. The Google AI overview does a good job of outlining emotional neglect.
Emotional neglect is a pattern of behavior that occurs when someone's emotional needs are consistently disregarded or invalidated. It can happen in many different ways, including childhood, when a child's emotional needs aren't met by their caregivers, such as when they don't show affection or support during difficult times. Some examples of emotional neglect include withholding affection, punishing a child for expressing negative emotions, not sharing joy when a child experiences something positive, telling a child their feelings aren't valid, ignoring a child's feelings, assigning negative attributes to a child.
I want to hone in on a couple of these, even though I think Carissa exhibits all of these signs of emotional neglect. The first one I want to hone in on is not sharing joy when a child experiences something positive. For example, in this video, Carissa writes a bunch of clues to surprise the kids. The surprise being that a family friend is moving into their neighborhood to help with the kids. Here's the video.
Dear Collin's kids, this is a little symbol of who your new neighbors will be in the future. I will give you 5 clues and let's see if you can guess who it might be. Clue 1. It is someone you have known for a long time. Shaq? Darlene!
Keep reading the clues.
Is it Darlene?
I don't know. Keep reading the clues.
Someone who has clue 2. Someone who has watched all grow up and that loves you all very much.
Keep reading.
I really think it's a Darlene. Clue 3. Someone you have moved further away from.
Animal. It's animal.
Clue 4. Someone who would always visit you weekly play. Darling. Play board games. And play someone who would come and watch you play basketball at times. Darlene. I already knew that since the first time. She's gonna be in the house?
I don't know. Oh, crud. I think the dish guy is here.
Who is it, Darlene?
I don't know.
It is Darlene. What do you think it is?
I don't know. Come here.
She plays board games and doesn't visit.
Come here, guys. Guys, come here.
Mom, it's not the dish guy. That's Darlene that just drove over here.
What are you talking about?
Mom, I know what I'm talking about. That's Darlene. I see her car. Darlene! You're my Darlene! Oh my goodness. Yes! Is it your house? No. Hi, sweetie. You lied.
Darlene,
What do you have?
it says you moved by us.
So throughout this whole video, Carissa still has that same monotone, flat kind of voice as she did when showing the kids' rooms. She also didn't try to make things exciting or fun for the kids when it comes to the surprise. The only ways she engaged with the kids was to shout at her daughter to keep reading and to answer, "I don't know," in a bored voice whenever the kids asked her questions. I mean, she could have set up a fun scavenger hunt for the kids to find the clues, especially since she took the time to write all of them out. Why not kind of hide them around the house or hide them around the property in a fun way and, make it as simple as playing hot or cold with the kids when they get close to another clue. You know what I mean? And at the very least, she could have talked to the kids in a more excited tone. But she didn't share in their joy at all, even when the surprise was revealed. She wasn't like, "Oh my gosh, who is it?" Or, "Oh my gosh, can you believe that so-and-so is coming to live by us?" Like, she didn't really share in their joy. I know that many say those are just two examples, so here is another.
Heads, shoulders, heads, cup. Heads, shoulders, heads, shoulders, heads, shoulders, heads, cup. Toes, shoulders, toes, heads, toes, cup. Shoulders, toes, heads, toes, heads, cup. Heads, toes, shoulders, heads, toes, shoulders, heads, shoulders, heads, toes, 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 heads, cup.
Again, it's just sad to me to hear how monotone she is when playing with the kids. There's no excitement in her voice, no cheering the kids on, no celebrating with the kids when they win. She just sounds bored. And this was from just a month ago at the time of making this video. It sounds like she just wanted to set up and film a video of the kids being cute because she knows it gets her a lot of views and a lot of engagement. Here's another video to prove my point. This time she plays a prank on the kids, something that you think would be fun and funny for everyone.
You're talking about right here. She just spelled doo-doo. Ew, it stinks! You farted! There you go. Ew! Ew! It's stinking! I can't. I'm about to die. I gotta get the baby. She farted! Guys, she got a prank thingy and she sprayed it or something. I know, I saw this prank. Get away. It smells like you. I saw that bag in the car. How are we supposed to get out of the car? Not even let it, guys. Armor farted. I can smell it, but Mom sprayed this fart stuff. I saw it. Yeah, it's you. I saw it. It has a bag in it. It's fine. Mom, how are we supposed to get rid of the smell? How are we gonna get out of here? Let's just go. Oh no, Mom, look, hiding me.
Anybody have any smelly good stuff?
So again, it's just odd to me that she pranks the kids and is so obvious about it. Like, she doesn't try to hide the fact that she's spraying the fart spray. But again, she doesn't joke or play along with the kids or chime in while they freak out. She doesn't kind of play dumb and be like, "Ew, oh my God, that's so smelly. Where did that smell come from?" She doesn't even really laugh until like the very end. And it kind of sounds like a fake laugh to me. So again, like the previous video I just showed, it seems like she just set up her video to, get the kids' reactions because she knew it would get a lot of views, engagement, etc. And here is yet another one.
So today we are showing our children a house that we think we might want to buy, and they have no idea that this is our home and that we have been praying over it and building it for 5 months. While we were in Kansas for the last week, my husband went ahead and set up all of their beds in their rooms so that they could see what their rooms look like. And so right now we're keeping all of the kids together so that we can surprise them with the first room, which is Anissa and Armor's room. And they already spotted Armor's crib, but watch and see how they react when they realize that this is their room and their house.
It's literally the same thing. Mom, the floor feels so good. What did y'all do? Mom, no! What? Oh, no. It's our house! Is this our house? Please. Is this our house? Wow, y'all played that good. That's great. Wait, we actually are moving here? Hey! Oh, no. Mom, I'm about to scream.
All right, you want to go see the other?
Is this for real, Mom?
Yes, it's for real.
You were just telling us that we were just coming in here to look.
I know, because we wanted to surprise you. We've been holding the secret for 5 months.
Wow, we've been wanting to for like,
I know, 10 years.
Yeah.
This was such a special surprise for the kids, who are clearly overjoyed by the news that this is their new house. But Carissa, again, doesn't make the experience exciting or joyful. The kids have to ask her over and over if this is their new house before Carissa finally just nods off camera. She doesn't get excited and say things like, "Yes, this is our new home. Aren't you so excited?" In fact, when the kids say over and over how happy and excited they are, Carissa doesn't respond or acknowledge their joy at all. Moving on to the other point I want to hone in on, Carissa often assigns negative attributes to her kids. For example, here's what she shared about one of her daughters having a problem with lying.
Carissa says, I'll give an example. One of my daughters, I had been wondering if she was lying about everything, but she would scream and cry that she was telling the truth, so I kept believing her. One day she had a really bad sore throat, and as I was praying for her, the Holy Spirit revealed her tongue to me. I asked her if she needed to admit to and repent for lying, and she said yes. And she was finally set free by admitting all her lies.
It's so odd to me that when she learns her daughter has a sore throat, she asked her if she needs to confess to lying and repent. If I were a mom and my kid was sick with a sore throat, that would not be my response at all. To me, it seems like Carissa believes her daughter is a liar, and so she used the fear of God to get her daughter to stop lying. If you feel like your kid has a problem with lying, then you should teach them in an appropriate way that lying is not okay. Also, by making your daughter believe that her sickness is the result of sin is really messed up. That will only cause her to have religious trauma by believing that God is out to punish her, so she better be good. Many conservative Christians like Carissa tend to use religion as behavior modification, though, so it really doesn't surprise me. Here's another video that shows Carissa giving her kids a temptation test.
Come on, just one winner.
One rule. Everybody sit down.
Okay. What's the one rule?
You cannot touch it until I come back.
Okay, what are you doing?
I'll be right back. No, you don't get it if you touch it. I'll be right back.
Anger, no sir. Answer, do not touch her. You're not getting. You come over here, buddy. You want to too.
you touch it?
No, she did.
Did you eat it? Good job. You guys get one piece.
I think it's weird that she called it a temptation test, as if her kids wanting a piece of candy was a bad thing. And I get that the temptation would be for her kids to disobey her, but why would you assume that your kids would automatically disobey you? Why wouldn't you have faith that you raised good kids who listen to you? Why the need to test them at all? And when Carissa comes back to find that the kids did obey her, she doesn't even sound that proud or happy. She just says, "Good job," in that monotone kind of voice. And here is yet another clip of Carissa assigning negative attributes to her kids.
Who's the most stubborn?
You think so?
Yes.
You really think so?
Yes. Our
Explain
stubborn
it.
kids got it from you.
Explain it.
It's your way or the highway.
In some cases, yes.
Yeah, all the
That's
time.
because I got to leave my family well.
Now, some may say that she's just joking, but I don't see it, especially with her being so serious when she calls Mondre stubborn. This tell-all video that Carissa and Mondre made also brings up another subtle sign of neglect on Carissa's part.
Who falls asleep first?
You two, all day long. You
No.
sleep, baby.
No, I'll sleep the longest and the most.
I
But
might
you
fall asleep.
first. We go to bed and you're snoring. I don't even, we just got in bed.
Baby, I work hard.
You fall asleep fast.
I work so hard. But wait, though. I mean, I only fall asleep when we watch a movie. So, I'll fall
No.
asleep on you in the middle of if you want to start a movie, at 12 o'clock at night, like you always do, then by the end of the movie,
That's 12
I'm
o'clock in the
going to
morning.
come up missing.
That's 12 o'clock in the morning.
Don't even look for me. But you,
Okay.
baby, you fall
whatever.
asleep pretty quick, though.
No, I don't.
And you go hibernate when you sleep, though. You don't wake up until the day is almost over on the next day.
Well, now that we have a newborn, I fall asleep first.
Oh, don't blame the newborn, baby. That's you.
Okay, who cooks better?
You do. I give you that.
Okay.
I give you that.
Who is a better morning person?
That's me.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
not
because
eating any more
you
snacks,
still
buddy.
hibernating, and I've already made dinner.
In this Q&A video, Mondre lets it slip that Carissa sleeps all the time. So Mondre calls out the fact that Carissa sleeps all day, often sleeps in, and Carissa shares on one Instagram post that she sleeps 8 to 10 hours a night, every night. Now, obviously, getting a good night's sleep is important, especially as a mom, but I have a lot of mom friends, and I don't know any that sleep 10 hours a night. Also, Mondre shares that Carissa sleeps in all the time.
What time you get out of bed, baby?
11. No, noon. No, 1. 12:30.
It keeps moving. Wow. So you didn't get up and I was up at what time?
We had no electricity today, so I did not want to get out of bed. And I was holding a warm baby, trying to keep her warm. So don't even go there.
So I woke up early this morning around 5:30 and went outside in the snow and grabbed a bunch of logs, lit the fire, so that our family could have some heat when they woke up this morning. And we grilled hot dogs. No cooking from Carissa because you were still asleep.
I wasn't asleep.
Well,
I was holding a baby and breastfeeding.
Well, you sure did play dead when I opened that door.
Well, I fell asleep a little bit.
You'll go from this to this. And you want to go back to this question, who falls asleep the fastest?
You
be faking it, man.
I don't fake it.
It depends. You pick and choose when you want to fake it, though.
No, I don't.
Yeah, it is, baby.
Why would I fake being asleep?
I don't know. Sometimes, it's time. I love you.
I think we're
It's
boring. Everybody know.
What do you? Oh, you don't want to
This
go
is
there.
boring.
You want to change it up? Go
No,
ahead.
this is boring.
You want to change it up?
Oh, I know.
So coupled with the fact that Carissa sleeps in often, naps a lot, and sleeps 10 hours a night, I view this as a subtle sign of neglect. Think about it. Kids wake up early at 6, 7, maybe even 8 o'clock, etc. So if Carissa is sleeping in until noon, she's already missed hours of spending time with her kids. It sounds like Carissa also stays up late every night based on this clip.
Who falls asleep first?
You two, all day long. You
No.
sleep, baby.
No, I'll sleep the longest and the most.
I
But
might
you
fall asleep.
first. We go to bed and you're snoring. I don't even, like, we just got in bed.
Baby, I work hard.
You fall asleep fast.
I work so hard. But wait, though. I mean, I only fall asleep when we watch a movie. So, like, I'll fall asleep on you in the middle of a movie. If you want to start a movie, like, at 12 o'clock at night, like you always do, then by the end of the movie, I'm gonna come up missing.
That's 12 o'clock in the morning.
Don't even look for me. But you,
okay,
baby, you
whatever.
fall asleep pretty quick, though.
No, I don't.
And you go hibernate when you sleep, though. You don't wake up until the day is almost over on the next day.
Well, now that we have a newborn, I fall asleep first.
Oh, don't blame the newborn, baby. That's you.
Late at night is understandably when Carissa can finally have time for herself. But if that's causing her to sleep in until noon or 1 p.m., I would argue that's being neglectful to her kids because, again, they have been up for hours without her, just Mondre. And I would also argue if you are then sending your kids to bed at 7, 8, 9, whenever kids usually go to bed, then Carissa has only had about 8 hours with her kids out of the day. That doesn't seem like very much time with your kids, especially as a stay-at-home mom. Obviously, if Carissa worked or the kids were in school, then she would have less time with them, but she chose to be a stay-at-home mom and to homeschool her kids so that she could have more time with them. So why then is she avoiding them all day by sleeping? You know, I shared all of this with my husband, who said that it sounds like she's clocking in for an 8-hour shift with her kids, and I kind of agree. Granted, I do want to be sensitive to the fact that Carissa still has an unresolved chronic illness, so she probably wants to rest a lot. But again, she knew that she had it before she started having kids. I would argue that it's also a form of neglect to know that you have a serious chronic illness and you refuse to take it seriously and then decide to have a bunch of kids. Just to be clear, I'm not condemning or shaming anyone who found out that they had a chronic illness while being pregnant or while already being a parent. I'm criticizing Carissa for knowing she has a serious illness with serious symptoms like dizzy spells, fainting, numbness in the limbs, extreme fatigue, and then deciding to not just have a kid, but have many kids. Okay, now I want to discuss the more extreme cases of neglect and abuse. So remember when Carissa was expressing concern that Mondre didn't know his own strength towards the kids? And here in this Q&A video, Mondre admits that he is the loud one of the two of them.
Who's the loudest?
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
You absolutely. I'm a roar.
Long story short, I think Mondre is abusive towards the kids. Remember, Carissa even said all of those years ago in one of her blog posts that there's a thin line between discipline and abuse, and she fears that Mondre is crossing that line. So here are some very troubling clips of one of their sons showing how he gets extremely distressed over the smallest things. Trigger warning for loud noises and also distressing content.
Skip to timestamp 8330 to avoid. Skip in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Miss it. Miss it. Watch out! The tickle monsters are coming to get you! Which one will tickle you first? Will it be Tickle All Over Us? Or Giggleopolis? Teehee Rex? Or Chuckle London? Don't laugh! Whatever you do! Oh my god.
It's hard to understand her here, but she says I'm going to pretend that I cut my finger off using this carrot. Let's see how it goes.
I think I cut my finger off with this carrot. Let's see how it goes.
So it was very distressing to see all of those clips back to back. Again, I'm not a mom or someone who deals with kids a lot, but I think it's really troublesome that he had such intense reactions to such small things. Minus the video where Carissa pretended to cut her finger off, obviously that would be very distressing to a child, especially since Carissa was acting like she was really, really hurt. Anyway, something just doesn't seem right about his intense crying at all, and it makes me wonder what he has seen or experienced to make him so scared. We know Mandre is loud with the kids and spanks them hard with a spatula, which I think is abusive, and that could definitely cause a kid to be distressed, obviously. Especially because in the feather video, Carissa was holding it out towards him the way that Mandre may hold a spatula to threaten the kids. And with the Tickle Monster book video, the kids seemed really scared when Carissa read the line, "It's gonna get you," which could be another threat of Mandre's. You know, he could tell the kids, like, "I'm gonna get you if you don't be quiet. I'm gonna get you if you don't settle down. I'm gonna get you if you don't listen." This is all speculation, allegedly, and in my own opinion. So we talked about how Carissa is emotionally neglectful, but I think she is emotionally abusive too, speaking of abuse. For example, Carissa posted this to her Instagram story one day. She claimed that she had a bad day and came back to all these notes from her kids. Remember, Carissa is a stay-at-home mom, so it's not like she had a bad day at work and came home to sweet, encouraging notes from her kids. I take this as she had a bad mental health day and took it out on her kids, especially since the kids are apologizing, promising to be better, and asking her to come back. I could see Carissa freaking out about no one appreciating her, grabbing her purse and storming out of the house, leaving the kids with Mandre for hours while she wanders around Target or something. Now, I'm not saying a mom can't have a bad mental health day at all, but one Reddit user on this topic put it best.
Their comment says, "As a mom, the one thing I make sure I don't do is make my kids feel like they are the reason for my bad day. I don't care what my kids do to contribute to said bad day. I'm the adult, so I have to keep my emotions in check in front of my kids. This is so wrong. Her kids are taking her emotional and mental pain as their own burden to carry."
So yeah, the fact that the kids have been made to feel it's their fault that their mom had a bad day, like that one note that said, "I'm sorry," over and over, which made me so sad. That is emotionally abusive. It shouldn't be a child's job to manage your emotion as a parent. Even if you do feel unappreciated by your kids, that's something you should process with your spouse, your adult friends, or maybe even a therapist. Kids can't help being selfish, emotional, or unappreciative sometimes. They're kids. They aren't emotionally mature like adults are supposed to be. I would argue that another form of neglect/abuse is putting your kids in harmful, dangerous situations. I think we would all agree about that. So one day, Carissa decided to take her kids to go protest abortions outside of a woman's clinic. Carissa states that the only bad thing that happened that day was a few people flipped them off as they were protesting. But I would argue that's already exposing your kids to abuse from strangers, and she should be thankful because something more serious could have happened. The last instance of abuse/neglect that I want to cover is the constant injuries that the children have. Now, I'm not alleging that all the injuries are the result of abuse, but I do think that Carissa and Mondre don't always take their kids' injuries seriously, which is a sign of neglect. And I do think that there are a few injuries that could be the result of abuse. So let's talk about the first incident.
When one of our kids fell down the stairs and you got up.
It's not funny.
And you wiped out.
So this was Anchor.
Yes.
So this was Anchor. Daddy was asleep. I was asleep on the couch.
I remember this one.
And Anchor fell down the stairs and hurt himself because I heard him go boom, 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 and he hit the gate. And so I jumped up from my sleep and I took off running. I had socks on and I slipped on the tile and I fell. I couldn't even get back up and walk because I don't know if I broke my toe.
You kept falling.
But I hurt my toe over and over again. I got back up and I fell again. And so I started crawling to him to be able to rescue my baby. And she thinks that's funny.
I know.
It wasn't funny at the time, but this is pretty funny.
That just shows
Is it as funny as me falling on my head yesterday? Because you were laughing about that today.
No, because I didn't expect it.
Here in this clip, even Mondre and their son says that Carissa shouldn't laugh at one of their sons falling down the stairs, or Mondre falling down and hurting himself while running to check on the kid. I think it's weird that Carissa would laugh and say that, oh, it wasn't funny then, but it is now. I would argue that this story isn't funny, period. I mean, what's funny about your kid falling down the stairs and your husband hurting himself in the process of going to check on your kid? I mean, you can even see that Mondre and the other son feel the same way by how serious they both look while telling the story, and again, how they told Carissa, don't laugh at that. Another example of Carissa not taking her kid's injuries seriously is when Anchor, the same boy that fell down the stairs, broke his leg.
Here's an Instagram post Carissa made about Anchor breaking his leg. Anchor broke his leg at a park by going down a slide. We don't understand how he broke it, since he went down the slide normally, as he always does, but after refusing to stand up, and lots of crying, we took him to urgent care and found it was broken under the knee. They informed us that it was a bone that could affect his ability to walk if we didn't treat it right away. They put a splint on him and sent us to an orthopedist. God has healed many broken bones in our family immediately. Yesterday was his ortho appointment, and so we prayed and fasted so that God would heal him. I could tell immediately after praying that he was healed. He started to walk all over the house with his splint on. He even climbed up on the table and did everything he could do before. We praised God before we even saw the results from the doctor. At the ortho appointment, they took another x-ray. The doctor said the break was practically non-existent. He wasn't concerned at all and just gave Anchor the tiniest, cutest boot that doesn't even cover the bone that was broken, to wear around to support him so that he doesn't re-injure the bone.
Just a few months later, Anchor broke his pinky and needed surgery on it. Between Anchor breaking a leg and breaking a pinky just a few months apart, suspicion from Carissa's followers began to arise. Some called her neglectful for not keeping a closer eye on Anchor, because how could he have two serious injuries so close together, as well as the story of him falling down the stairs? It just seems like this kid is constantly unsupervised and getting himself into really serious accidents. The reason that some of her followers suspected abuse is because 2-year-olds aren't quite at the roughhousing stage yet. They're not climbing trees or jumping off of things or wrestling with their siblings too hard. And so the fact that he had such serious frequent injuries at such a young age, again, only 2 years old, is troubling. And again, many saw this as a sign of abuse or at least serious neglect because he kept finding himself in such serious accidents back to back to back to back.
In this Facebook post, Carissa shares how another one of her sons, Andre, broke his hand.
This is a long read, but it gives a peek into Carissa's mind, so hang in there.
A boy's forever healing testimony. 3 weeks ago, we were having Bible study at the park when Andre came to me crying. He had been climbing the monkey bars and his hand was now full of blisters that were peeling. His entire palm was peeling away and he was in a lot of pain, so we started to practice healing. We prayed healing over him, believed it was received and resumed playing. He then walked out the healing over the next few days, slowly receiving the healing and seeing God work. 1 week later, he is in the backyard climbing the basketball goal and swinging from the rim when the entire basketball goal falls to the ground and crushes his hand. His hand was black and blue, extremely swollen, and I knew something had to be broken. He was then rushed to the hospital and we found out that the middle bone in his hand was in fact broken. We set up his cast appointment, but we also started to learn about healing and how God was going to heal him so that he would not need a cast. The weekend came and we had friends over. They asked Andre about his hand and he excitedly said he was getting a cast and couldn't wait for his friends to sign it. My heart sank. I thought we were trusting God for healing. He cared more about getting his cast signed than he did about miraculous healing. Sunday came and Andre decided to sit in the adult church service instead of the children's. We did not tell him to do this or even ask if he wanted to. While I was singing on stage, God reminded me that I had been fasting for a few days, and he told me that I should teach Andre about fasting. So after the service I talked to Andre. He was crying and clearly filled with the Holy Spirit. I invited him to fast with me if he wanted to. During the second service, I stepped out to the hall to nurse. Andre found me and told me that he would join me in fasting. He was so happy that he was crying. Monday comes and temptation started. The first day of a fast is the hardest, especially since we had amazing food left over from our weekend. However, I didn't remind Andre of the fast because I knew he wouldn't stay strong. I also gave up TV and spent time reading the Bible. Tuesday came and I woke up to study the Bible with Andre. We learned that healing comes after belief, action and praise. Then we confidently prayed for Andre's hand to be healed. We also spent the morning singing praise songs to God. I could tell Andre was facing a spiritual battle, so I prayed over him many times. We proceeded to have Bible study in the park again that afternoon and Andre played basketball with the big kids, even with his quote broken and quote hand. It was incredible. Wednesday came, we prayed and praised God the whole way to the doctor. All 8 of us waited for an hour and we met several people and shared our faith with them. Andre gets his X-ray and the doctor comes in. We see the X-ray and how all the bones are aligned perfectly. The doctor tells us that a cast is not necessary, that Andre is healing fine. He also says Andre doesn't have to wear a splint and that he can play basketball, tie his shoes and do other activities as normal. 4 days later and Andre's faith is stronger than ever. He got to witness, at the age of 6, God heal his broken hand. He has already climbed the monkey bars, dribbled the basketball with both hands, played basketball multiple times and lived life as if nothing ever happened to him. What a mighty God we serve. Andre will live to forever tell of the day God healed his hand, and I can't imagine what else God has in store.
There's so much to unpack here, like how Carissa asked Andre to fast with her, even though he was 6 years old. As we all know, it's dangerous to a child's health to go days without eating. Even in cultures where fasting is a big part of the culture, like in the Middle East where they observe Ramadan, children younger than 15 are discouraged from fasting. and even children older than 15 are only encouraged to fast for a few hours of the day. Not all day like the adults do. The amount of neglect is also distressing. In some of these stories, while Carissa did take her sons to the doctor to get a temporary splint for their broken bones, it sounds like she didn't encourage her kids to rest. In fact, it sounds like she just prays for them and encourages them to go back to life as normal. For example, when Anchor broke his leg and got a splint, Carissa said he walked all around the house and climbed on stuff.
Overall, it's troubling to see that Carissa cared more about Anchor's religious experience than his physical well-being. That goes back to what I touched on a while ago when Carissa shared that she was so distraught that she couldn't breastfeed, that she neglected her first daughter's health and well-being and did not give her a bottle or take her to see a doctor and just let her cry and scream for 40 hours while not having anything to eat. Carissa then valued her feelings over her daughter's well-being, and here again, she values her feelings instead of his health and well-being. The last major sign of neglect that I want to discuss is the lack of education that Carissa's kids have. Like many stay-at-home moms, Carissa homeschools her kids, which I don't have a problem with either of those things. Like, obviously, I don't have a problem with stay-at-home moms, and I don't have a problem with stay-at-home moms who choose to homeschool their kids. The problem I have is that clearly Carissa isn't dedicated to her children's education. It goes without saying that if you decide to homeschool your kids, then you need to step up into the role of a teacher. And being a teacher is a lot harder than it looks. You need to have patience, clear communication, and understanding of how children learn best and at what age children can handle different levels of curriculum, etc. Carissa has none of these skills, I would argue. Case in point, here is an Instagram essay post from Carissa about her thoughts on homeschooling.
In this Instagram post, Carissa says, "The misconception many people have with me homeschooling is that it comes easy, and that I have saintly patience. I get better every day, but it's taken years to not get outrageously frustrated teaching little kids. So to my mamas, don't get discouraged. It's normal. Keep pushing through. You're their best teacher." And here are some commonly asked homeschooling questions that I get asked often. What curriculum do you use? I've tried many different ones. I used to love my father's world for the early years, but it got too expensive for all the different pieces I would need for each grade. Easy Peasy was free but didn't match my children's progress. Time for learning was online and hands-off. My children didn't learn much and they're now adding new gender language I don't agree with. This year we found a curriculum. We can all do it together every day. It's called Gather Round Homeschool. What's your daily schedule like? We wake up, do chores, spend time with God, sit down and do school for around 2 hours, eat lunch, nap time or quiet time, park time or outdoor playtime, dinner, family time, bed.
If you missed it, Carissa said in that essay post that they only have school for 2 hours a day. She also shares that again in another Instagram post. Again, I'm not a teacher anymore. I was for a few years in China. But I don't think that 2 hours of education is enough to tackle math, science, reading, writing, which includes vocab, spelling, grammar. It's not enough time to also tackle history and some kind of like PE class or health class. Also, I don't think 2 hours is enough to give each of the kids lessons that are appropriate for their grade level. In fact, one teacher left this comment on a post Carissa made about homeschooling that I think sums up the many questions/concerns people have about how Carissa manages to teach all of her kids different curriculum that's appropriate for their grade level.
The comment says, "How do you manage all their different grade levels at the same time? For example, high school sciences like chemistry and physics, and different types of math, like algebra or calculus, and the different types of literature for each grade level. What about foreign languages? Are they all learning the same one or different ones? And what about all of the different ways they teach writing? Like how kids learn cursive in elementary school starting in 3rd grade and then move on to other methods of writing? Or how you teach different forms of essay writing depending on the grade level? I can't imagine preparing so many different lessons. It's just overwhelming to me, and I was a teacher. I think it makes things so much harder for you because of the wide range of ages and grade levels.
By the way, I love this shady comment here because I totally agree. So in fact, we have a peek at how Carissa manages to teach all of her kids at different grade levels. I'm going to insert a clip from Rachel Oates, another YouTuber with a much larger platform that covers a lot of similar families like the Duggars, Ruby Frankie, and also the Collins family. She did an amazing deep dive on Carissa almost a year ago and covers many things that I don't in my video, so go give hers a watch. It's really, really well researched. So in Rachel's deep dive, she found samples of the curriculum that Carissa uses and breaks it down for us. So I'm just going to include a short clip from Rachel's video explaining how Carissa educates her children.
This year we found a curriculum we can use together as a family. It's simple. We can do it all together every day, and we love doing it as a family. Gather Round Homeschool. Now, the fun thing about Gather Round Homeschool is they have a ton of free samples of their resources online, so you can really go and see exactly what these kids are getting, the way they structure it so all the kids do the same lesson but do different tasks. It just makes no sense to me, because what do they then do next year? How do you build knowledge when they're all the same lessons again but with different tasks? It's not really building knowledge properly, is it? Let's take a look at this earth science lesson. And under the geography activities, early elementary kids are instructed to trace a line on a map and label North America, where older kids are told to draw a fault line on a map from a description and label continents, and high school kids are told to do the exact same thing and throw in a few country names if they fancy it. Doesn't really seem like enough progression, does it? There are these activities for kids to just copy out Bible verses and learn to spell words like justice, righteousness, and faithfulness in an earth science lesson. Then a colouring page so kids can cut out and colour their own tsunami destroying a beach. Everything is tied back to the Bible too, so this lesson on rocks and minerals wants kids to list treasures on earth and in heaven because reasons. Or in this chemistry lesson, it all ties back to how God created us, nothing is by accident, and blah blah blah. I also have issues with how even the most advanced stuff in these curriculums doesn't seem advanced enough. Like the high school segment in this one chemistry book, nothing is more advanced than you'd get at 11 or 12 years old. This is a high school activity, so we're talking 14 to 18-year-olds here. And they're getting stuff like define solids, liquids, and gases. Predict what you think the weather will be like today. I know this is only a sample lesson, but I've seen a lot of the sample lessons now. You can download 30 of them online. And you can also see the contents lists for the rest of the courses and stuff like that. And it's just, it doesn't feel like enough. Take another example from what's supposed to be a psychology course, and the first activity is to memorize these Bible verses and work on these frequently misspelled words like woman and studying. Again, this is a high school activity. High school. I know what I said earlier about everyone learning at their own pace, but I really do think this is far too basic for kids aged 14 to 18. Some pages like these seem a little more appropriate for younger teens, maybe around 13 to 15, but it's a shame that these are the minority. Other than these samples I found though, I also found some screenshots on the Fundy Snark subreddit, one which pointed out that the person who made this entire curriculum has absolutely no qualifications of her own, which is something she likes to brag about and use as a selling point. My name is Rebecca Spooner. I have no special accreditation. I have no certificates or qualifications lining my wall. I'm just a homeschool parent like you. I'm a second-generation homeschooler who is following my mother's footsteps. I have lived and breathed homeschool for as long as I can remember. So Carissa reads this and thought, yes, I will give her my money and trust my children's education to her and her lack of qualifications.
So in between the 2 hours of schooling a day and this rather simple curriculum, many people think that Carissa is being extremely neglectful when it comes to her children's education. We have a few examples of Carissa's eldest child, a 14-year-old, as of the time of this video, who is barely able to read a children's book to her younger sister.
And fiddles. Her assistant circles and tugs and wags. When she is finished, she stands up and takes a long look at it. Her assistant gives a head up with his paw. Look, that's him. It's a dog. And she hanged her things on the gate so it could sit there. And she was pinning it so it could be yellow. Things it is still wrong. She decides to try again. The girl saws and glues the
And back in this clip where Carissa wrote out clues to the surprise for the kids, we can again see the same daughter struggling to read basic sentences.
This is a little symbol of who your new neighbors will be in the future. I will give you 5 clues, and let's see if you can guess who it might be. Clue 1. It is someone you have known for a long time. Shaq? Darlene!
Keep reading the clues.
Is it Darlene?
I don't know. Keep reading the clues.
Someone who has clue 2. Someone who has watched all grow up and that loves you all very much.
Keep reading.
Oh, I really think it's a Darlene. Clue 3. Someone you have moved further away from.
Animal. It's animal.
Clue 4. Someone who would always visit you weekly, play
Darling.
Play board games. Someone who would come and watch you play basketball at times. Darlene. I already knew that since the first time.
She's gonna be in the house.
I don't know.
So granted, she may have a learning disability, but sadly that may go unnoticed because Carissa, unlike teachers, isn't trained to spot the signs of potential learning disabilities like ADHD or dyslexia. I mean, of course, like, parents can spot those things too, but I would argue that since Carissa doesn't really socialize her kids by enrolling them in public school or private school or some kind of homeschool group, she doesn't really have other kids to compare her kids to. You know what I mean? She doesn't really have a gauge for what milestones kids should hit when, or signs that, you know, her children might be behind in certain areas, because she has nothing to compare it to. She doesn't have other children to compare her children to, if that makes sense. And we also saw how seriously Carissa took her children's health issues and injuries. So I would argue that even if her daughter or any of her other children had a learning disability like ADHD or dyslexia, Carissa would not take that seriously and would not get them help for that disability. She would just leave it up to God. Okay, so we have covered a lot on Carissa, from her problematic mommy blogs to her TMI Instagram post to her weird beliefs and neglect towards her kids. But I want to end with talking about the psychology of Carissa, because she is fascinating to me. One interesting aspect of Carissa's psychology is how she uses religion to control everyone around her, including herself. Remember, way back at the top of this video, we learned how Carissa used religion to convince Mondre to start a family, even though he wasn't ready. I think the God told me card is how Carissa essentially gets her way with Mondre. I talked about this a bit, but I think religion is how a lot of conservative Christian wives control their husbands, even though they claim that their husband is the leader, the head of the household. the final authority on things regarding the family, blah, blah, blah. Despite what these conservative Christian women or trad wives say, no one wants to be bossed around and have no say in their marriage, right? So I think wives like Carissa use God to get their way, because while their husbands may disagree with them, they can't disagree with God, right? And telling someone who is deeply religious like Mandre that God told me we need to do X, Y, Z can be very persuasive. We also see how Carissa uses God/religion to control her kids by how she got her daughter to admit that she was lying, by telling her that God made her throat sore, and if she confesses to lying, that she'll feel better physically. And how she forces her family to fast with her or pray for healing instead of trusting the doctors. The interesting part of Carissa's psychology is that she uses religion to control herself, too. One interesting example of this is the list of things that Carissa says married Christians can't do in the bedroom.
Carissa says, there are many ways that we can indulge in sexual sin in our marriage. Porn, anal, oral, masturbation, other partners, dress up, toys, and today God revealed to me even certain positions. Just as yoga and its positions are demonic, we use a lot of those same positions in sex as well. I will let you connect the dots.
These are all perfectly normal things that married Christian couples can absolutely explore in the bedroom, in my opinion.
Except for the part about other partners.
The Bible is not against any of these things, by the way, coming from a Christian that has read the Bible cover to cover. I think, again, those are just arbitrary things that Carissa decides she's not okay with, and rather than exploring what the Bible does or doesn't say on these topics, she just claims that God told her so. Carissa actually told on herself in this way with a Facebook post where she talks about not wanting to read the entire Bible. That's right. She did not want to read the entire Bible and did not want Mandre to do it either.
The post says this: I can remember years ago when my husband decided to read the Bible in 1 year. I can admit I was upset. So dumb, right? But I felt convicted. I didn't want to read the Bible. I don't like reading. The Bible is boring, and don't you dare go above and beyond me. It's just not necessary to read all of it, right?
This post seemed so out of character for Carissa at first because this woman constantly quotes the Bible. But then I thought about it more and it actually makes sense. But first of all, as a Christian, I would argue that if you feel like you hear God telling you to not read the Bible cover to cover, that call is coming from downstairs rather than upstairs. You know what I mean? So anyway, the more I thought about Carissa's resistance to Mandre reading the Bible cover to cover and her resistance to read the Bible cover to cover herself, it made sense. Because going back to what I said about Carissa constantly claiming that God tells her things, Carissa wants to bend the word of God to back up what she wants and what she thinks, rather than taking in what the Bible truly says and living according to what God really says, or even praying and asking God with an open heart and an open mind what he says on certain topics. So I think Carissa was against Mandre reading the Bible cover to cover because she saw it as him not trusting her, that God told her this and that. And she probably didn't want to read something in the Bible that would contradict what she thought or what she wanted. Which leads me to this conclusion. I think even though Carissa will never admit it, part of her psychology is that she has high anxiety. Case in point, this Instagram post.
Carissa says, there are many areas of my life I have surrendered over to God, and there are many areas of my life I am still trying to force my control on. 1. Control over my wants and desires. I struggle with wanting control over our finances and getting things I feel I must have. 2. Control over my children's behavior. When they act up, I feel that I am not in control and therefore a bad mom. This stirs up anxiety in me that I am not doing something right and must take control. 3. Control over what me and my husband are learning spiritually. When we aren't learning at the same pace, or even learning different things, I begin to fear we are moving in different directions, so I become anxious and even hostile. 4. Control over what other people believe and are learning. When other people are not on the same page as me, I become anxious and feel the need to control their information.
Not all the time, but often people who have high anxiety can be control freaks because they believe that if they can control everything around them, then there's no need to worry. I also think that Carissa struggles with chronic depression. When Mondre shared in their Q&A video that she sleeps all day and every day, I took that as a sign of chronic depression. Although this is not common in all people who have depression, it is still a sign of depression. I think Carissa's lack of emotion / her flat affect points to her having chronic depression as well. That is another sign of depression, and when I was deep in my depression a few years ago, people made the same observation about me, that I had low affect and never really smiled or showed much emotion in my face or in my voice. Like many mental health issues, they can often stem from our childhood. In this Instagram post, Carissa opens up about her struggle with depression as far back as her childhood.
Carissa says this, a depressed, insecure, bulimic, suicidal, self-absorbed mother of 7. I would have never imagined years ago that a day would come when I left the house without makeup on or doing my hair, and those days have come. I never pictured myself as a mother, but vowed that if I ever became one, I would never leave the house without my hair and makeup done. I was one of the most insecure people you would ever meet. If there was something you could hate on your body, I hated it. I would have changed every single part of me if I could. I did everything under the sun to lose weight. So therefore I suffered depression that went unattended, and it got so bad that I attempted suicide. I was raised in a great home with great Christian teachings, and still suffered from these unimaginable disorders.
Here, Carissa also opens up a bit about what caused her body image issues.
I can remember the first time I was made fun of for my big nose, my huge feet, my freckles, my skinny legs, my pale skin, and what followed was not okay. I spent a lifetime seeking worldly beauty instead of embracing God's beauty. I spent tons of money on hair extensions, tanning, makeup, and expensive clothing.
So I'm going to get a bit personal here and share that I was also bullied as a kid. The bullying persisted all the way up until I was 17. In a session with my therapist a few months ago, we were working on getting to the root of my chronic depression. She told me that chronic depression is caused by a deep sense of shame and worthlessness about yourself. That shame and worthlessness can come from many things, like bullying, parents who expected you to be perfect, parents that are abusive, romantic partners that may have cheated on you, or just otherwise make you feel worthless. I could go on and on. But I would argue that Carissa, like me, began to experience a deep sense of shame and worthlessness about herself due to being bullied. Don't worry about me, by the way. I'm doing fine with the help of my support system, therapy, and medication, as well as my faith. But I do worry about Carissa because I don't think she's ever healed from those hard childhood memories and gotten help for her chronic depression. Which brings me to my final point. Why did Carissa have all these kids? Especially considering in her Instagram posts throughout the years, she talks about how hard each pregnancy is and how overwhelmed she feels as a mom. Seriously, I went into a deep dive of her Instagram post throughout the years because I was so fascinated by her dynamic with her kids and how honest she was about her experiences as a mom. And in this deep dive of her Instagram post, I noticed a pattern that literally every 2 or 3 posts, she would talk about having mental breakdowns, screaming at the kids, feeling overwhelmed, hating being pregnant because of how hard it was on her, etc. And I'm not the only one that's noticed that Carissa seems miserable as a mom. Many have picked up on how she describes motherhood, how she seems bored, checked out with her monotone voice and low affect, and how she doesn't show herself having fun with her kids, etc. So again, it begs the question of why would she have so many kids? Although Carissa will swear up and down that her reason for having so many kids is that she's trusting God with her womb, I think the reason is deeper than that. I think Carissa desperately needs to feel loved. In these Instagram posts about her views on marriage, she basically confirms this.
Here Carissa says, when I got married, I had one condition, that my husband only desires me for the rest of his life. I wanted all of his attention, all of his affection, all of him and only for me. In this post, Carissa says, I have a lot of flaws, and I am my biggest critic, so when someone brings something to my attention, I usually already know that it is a major flaw of mine, but I want people to love me where I am, to love me as is. Right now, especially my spouse, I know a flaw of mine is that I am unaffectionate, and I have worked on that for years. Regardless of this flaw, I would still love to be loved for my good qualities, to be loved for where I am, and not loved for where I could be.
So here's what I think happened. I think Carissa got married young, at 22, to the first guy that took an interest in her. Here Carissa shares the story of her clubbing days and how she would often give out her phone number to dudes. But Mondre was the only one who actually called her back. Or called her, period, rather. So they got married young, because that's what you do in the South and as Christians, again, coming from someone who is both a Southerner and a Christian. And again, I think that Carissa wanted to get married young because of her deep need to be loved unconditionally and completely. But when she learned that marriage is hard sometimes, and that people aren't perfect, and that your insecurities don't just go away because you're a wife, she then thought that becoming a mom would help her feel better about herself, because the love of a child is the purest, most unconditional form of love there is. But then her first pregnancy was so challenging, and her breastfeeding journey was so hard, and her anxiety was still there on top of PPD, and underneath all of that, her sense of shame and worthlessness was still there. So she thought that with having another kid, things would be different. Everyone's first pregnancy and child is difficult, right? And so she had another child and another and another and another until she ended up with 11. And still plans to have more because she is, quote, trusting God with her womb, end quote. I think all of the attention Carissa gets for having a big family is motivation for why she kept getting pregnant and why she continues to talk about having even more kids. I think she likes the stares and the comments she gets in public, and she likes the attention and clout she gets on social media too. I mean, she has 1.6 million followers on Instagram, and the only content she makes lately is about having so many kids. The last reason why I think she wants to have so many kids is because she views it as a sacrifice to God, and she wants to be praised by people and or God about how selfless she is, how noble she is, how self-sacrificing she is. That may sound strange to some, but in more traditional versions of Christianity, there's the idea of martyrdom, which is basically dying or sacrificing greatly for the sake of your faith. Again, I grew up in a similar Southern conservative community like Carissa, and I remember being told, even from a young age, that I needed to be willing to die for my faith. That if someone put a gun to my head and told me that they'll shoot me unless I say I don't believe in God, then I should tell them to shoot me. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carissa heard the same message and took it to heart, especially because being a martyr is noble and a big deal in Christianity. Nearly all of Jesus's 12 disciples were killed for their faith, and many people throughout early history were martyred for being Christians as well. Even in modern history, there are many nations like Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, China, and North Korea where you cannot openly be a Christian, and at the least, you may be fined or serve jail time for openly being a Christian, and at worst, you will be executed. Anyway, the idea of being persecuted or martyred for being a Christian is sadly still a problem as well. And again, many Christians find it noble to be a martyr because what can be more noble than to willingly die for your beliefs, right? And since Carissa believes that it is her God-given duty to have as many kids as God wants her to have, she is totally willing to sacrifice anything, even her life, to have more kids. Here are some posts which say exactly that.
In this comment on her Instagram, someone asks Carissa, if I almost died last time I had a baby, should I forgo family planning, i.e., tracking when you have sex, to avoid getting pregnant, and potentially leave my living kids motherless? Doesn't God give us knowledge so that we can make decisions to protect our families? Carissa replies, I have almost died a few times. I am posting a video about this soon. I would most def give my life to bring about more. Heart eye emoji. Here's another post where Carissa expands on her thoughts about dying. In childbirth, here's the reality. Every mother I know would die for their children, and almost every mother I know has been told they could die or their health is at risk if they have children. I was told this after baby too. Yes, I had health issues during pregnancy since, and many complications in pregnancy since. I've had moments where I almost died, but we either trust God or we don't. We either give Him our lives or we don't. So yes, I would absolutely give my life to bring another child into the world. You might ask, what about your other children? We aren't birthing children for us. We are birthing children for the Lord. We have to trust Him in all things. I trust God will take care of them. I know a lot of people are bitter about the situations they were born into. But would you rather be dead? I know I sound crazy, but I think saying you would die for your now babies, but not your future babies is crazy.
Again, I think Carissa thinks that this makes her sound noble, but really it just makes me sad for her kids. I can totally understand that as a parent, you would be willing to give up your life to save or protect your kid. But that isn't what Carissa said, right? She said that she would be willing to give her life to bring more life into the world. Ma'am, I would argue that your 11 kids who are already in the world would rather have you with them. And again, as a mom, don't you want to do everything in your power to have as much time with your kids here on earth as you can? It really troubles me that so many doctors have told her to not have any more kids, as she is a very high risk for dying in childbirth due to her underlying health issues and how many children she's already given birth to. I can't imagine being a mom, getting this news and not taking it seriously because you want to sacrifice yourself for something that you think God wants you to do. When I shared this with my husband, he pointed out that maybe Carissa is just looking for a way out. You know what I mean? Carissa has shared that she has struggled with suicidal ideation a lot in her life. And people who have anxiety and depression like her tend to have more thoughts of suicide than others. So that brings me to the saddest conclusion about Carissa, that having kids was never really about the kids or the joy of motherhood. It's all been about her all along. There was so much I found in my deep dive of Carissa's Instagram that proves this and shows the true horrifying depths of her emotional and, I would argue, physical abuse and neglect of her kids. It's way too much to add into this video, so I'm going to make another one just focusing on her journey of motherhood as told by her Instagram post, because she uses Instagram like her digital diary. All right. This video was very long, my longest one so far, and if you're still here, would you put a wolf emoji in the comment? Don't tell anyone why, just leave a comment and add the wolf emoji. It'll be our secret, and it'll help me see how y'all like these long videos. Take care and keep an eye out for my next video deep diving through Carissa's journey of motherhood as told by her very troubling Instagram post. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for watching and listening, and until next time.